We want to just bow our heads real quick for a little prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be together and help us do the right things as we work through bills that affect Georgians' lives, and as we did today, come together and continue to do so. Please look after us, look at our families as we're gone. Please look after us and take care of us. In your name, amen. All right, first I promised Mr. Barry Fleming. He's got things to do. He's got House Bill 392. It's right there. I think most of y'all have heard a little. We had a hearing on it last year, and we're ready to take this one we will vote on today. So committee members, you'll just turn it over to Representative Fleming.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you so much. House Bill 392 in front of you, and the LC number I'm working off of, which I believe is in your folder, LC 337089S. Mr. Chairman, as you may recall from last year, House Bill 392 deals with a small quirk in our law that's going to help Georgia Military College as they help high school kids with our Move On Ready program. As you all know, Move On and Ready is a great program for our high school kids to allow them to get college credit in a very economical way. Georgia Military College, as I understand it, helps more of these college kids across the state than any other single university. They're located, their main campus, of course, in Milledgeville, where Representative Williams is, but they have satellite campuses all across the state of Georgia, and a very large one over in my area near Augusta. Right now, they have 5 learning periods. When I was in school, we were on the quarter system, and most schools are now on the semester system. But they have 5 learning periods, and we have language in our code that indicates there can be payments for 4 learning periods when you have this Move On When Ready funds. They always have a juggling act to do to try to explain to parents and kids in the high schools this differential, and all this bill does is change that to make it clear that their 5 learning periods that they have available can be funded for Move On When Ready, and you don't have a kid having to pause or stop or put something on the application that doesn't quite reflect where his studies are at the time. We have changed the bill. The reason it's a sub is that we've made it not effective until 2019, because if more high school kids do take advantage of this, there could be a small budget impact. But that's a success story if we have these kids doing this. Mr. Chairman, that is basically what the bill does. I brought General Caldwell from Georgia Military College here with me with plenty of backup. We're happy to try to answer any detailed questions you may have or members of the committee.
Oops, excuse me. Committee members have a question. Ms. Burnow, are you 9 or 10? 10. There you go.
Okay. I just have one question. What's the percentage of students that would use all 5 standards per year, per academic year?
General Caldwell, do you or Commissioner Addison know the answer to that? This is General Caldwell with Georgia Military College.
Ma'am, our rough assessment is probably about 263 students. When you extrapolate out what our normal course load does in the summer period, we think it would be about 263 students.
Okay, thank you.
Any other committee members?
Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman.
Ms. Gasaway.
The question I asked them in the summer and just sort of ask it in public, we're basically taking the same amount of money and dividing it by 5. They're not getting 1.25. They're getting the funding, like a year's worth of funding divided by 5.
I want to make sure I understand your question, Representative. You mean per student, or you're talking about overall money that would flow through Georgia Military because of the service they provide?
Well, for example, we pay on a quarter. You talked about quarter system. We have amount of money we pay. Let's just say it's 25% of. We pay $1. We're paying a quarter per quarter. Is that making sense?
I'm following you. Go ahead.
In this case, we're going to pay 20% payments.
I think what's going to happen
If somebody was in all 5.
Yes,
Sorry.
sir. I think what's going to happen is that the reimbursement for the education these kids receive is going to be the same, no matter which of the quarters they may be involved in. But this would simply reason there could be a budget impact is this will allow a kid to take more classes in a shorter period of time. So that's when I say there could be a budget impact, that's what I mean. But as far as the amount they'll be getting, this is not going to affect that per quarter hour that these kids are studying. And if I said that incorrectly, please help me out. But I think I'm right on that. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's just the whole thing, calling it quarters. When you got,
I see your question. Okay, with 5 learning periods, why would you call it a quarter system? I think the quarter systems would be a general description. Is there a better word, Commissioner Addison? Non-standard academic term.
but when I spoke with them in the summer about this in my office, they felt like what I was saying. They understood then that it's the same amount of money to split 5 ways, where other schools have it split 4 ways. In the hypothetical case where a student
I
went
see your
straight
point.
through.
I see your point. I think you're
I wanna
correct.
make sure
Yes,
that's
I agree
the
with you.
public understanding of this.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. Yes. Yeah.
Representative Holcomb, I believe that's you. No, it's Ms. Garner. Excuse me.
Well, that's what I thought too, but it says here on the information paper that you provided that the cost would be 697,000. Is that 697 more, or is it is that the,
Ma'am, just to be real clear, a student right now can come take classes with us through 4 quarters.
right?
That's what the current legislative action it reads.
And if they take a 5th quarter now, what happens?
And if they come and take the summer period with us, the 5th quarter, then in fact, they would still be covered under dual enrollment, whether they took it with us or with another institution in the state of Georgia. They would still, that reimbursement money would still be there.
I think this is a good idea. I'm just
Right.
trying to understand, but it sounds to me there would be an additional cost because they're taking an official.
Right, so instead of taking it at another institution, they would now have the opportunity to take it with us.
So it's
whether
not
we-
it's not the same amount of money.
Yeah,
because they've
there's
been-
not, each student isn't given X amount of dollars for the
Right.
year and that's it.
Yeah.
Each student can take as many courses as they can work in during an academic year. There is no cap on how much, right now in the legislative language, nobody's capped at how many courses they take during a year.
And I was thinking that last year you told us that sometimes they pay for it themselves because it's important to them.
What we do at Georgia Military College, if a student, they can only take up to 12 credit hours per term. If they take more than that, and we are comfortable with it, then we pay the additional. We scholarship it. So no student pays anything out of their pocket. So if you're taking a course with us, especially when it comes to labs, most labs will take about 15 credit hours in a quarter. We scholarship. This past year, we spent just over $330,000 scholarshiping high school students so they could take more than what the legislation allows in a quarter attending classes at Georgia Military College.
I'm still confused, but I'm in favor of them getting the education as quickly as they can. So I guess rather than ask a lot of more confusing questions, I'd just like to.
Well, I think the point is a student can take 12 credit hours per semester. So now they'll be able to do that through 5 non-standard
Segments.
academic terms with us.
Yeah,
They can do it 5 terms instead of 4 terms.
for the same amount of money.
Now, there would be a more reimbursement for that student.
That's fine.
There's no cap on how much a student can take during an academic. The only cap is 12 credit hours per academic term. And then, like I said, a lot of our students will want to take, not a lot, but there's a fair number that like to take labs and additional courses. So when they go over 12, in agreement with us, we'll scholarship those. It was just over about 300 courses this past year that we scholarshiped.
So instead of you're scholarshiping the students, though, you're asking,
No, that scholarship will still stay in effect.
okay,
Because what we're just saying is in the 5th non-standard academic term, our estimate, there probably will be 260 students that'll want to come in and take a course or 2 during the summertime. Right now, we discourage students from starting in the summertime with us and tell them wait to the fall so that you can do the full academic year to coincide with your high school's academic calendar.
yeah,
So they don't have a blank space someplace in the calendar.
right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I think you have Representative Williams.
Yes, sir. And just to clarify, a student is not going to get more money at the end of his term education. It just allows him to continue going and not interrupting his academic year, that he's continuously takes courses. So in essence, student A, rather than taking him 3 years, he could be through in 2 years. Does that make it clearer?
That is correct.
Yeah.
They can stay going to school. The original legislation, we believe, was written so a student could go year-round if they wanted.
Right.
Not knowing that there was still one public independent school in Georgia that stayed on a non-standard academic term of 5 quarters, which is us.
Right.
So we're the unique school out there that we think it was just written, but the intent is a student go year-round. Right now they can't. If they start with us, they have to stop, and really high school principals and superintendents would prefer it be in the summer, so it doesn't interfere with the academic school year and having an open space.
But if they're in another college, ma'am, Mr. Chairman, if they're in
Yes, sir.
another college, then they can continue
That's-
going.
That's correct.
And so this just levels the playing field so the student can continue going and finish his education sooner rather than having to sit out. Yeah,
That's correct.
great, thank you.
Please, Ms. Mathiak next.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Williams, because I think he did a great job at explaining the continuation of education rather than stopping and starting it for that summer. I like to call it quarters, and I know what you guys are saying. The other thing that I would like to tell this committee is I had the opportunity to visit the campus in Milledgeville, and you want to find some students that are charged up and ready to go. That's the place to go. I was just so impressed, but thank you for being here today, gentlemen.
Mr. Gasaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to where I started, because the issue then, the gentleman brought up that you could go there now for 4 units, and then because we don't fund 5 units in a year, then you could go to another school for a unit. There's
Sir, just so I'm clear, you can only do 4 units wherever you go each year right now.
okay. So maybe I need my man in the back with student finance, because I thought we were clear on this, but now I'm getting more confused. Because I met with them privately this summer about it, but what I'm hearing today is completely different from what I heard this summer, and I'm not sure how this money divides is what I'm trying to understand.
But want to be good if you just started maybe from the beginning on how this works.
Because I
May
know
clear
there's
it up,
not
'cause I think there's bit and pieces coming out, and maybe what's the confusing part.
there's not 5 quarters in a whole.
So
I'm sure about that. That's the only thing I know for sure.
you go ahead, Mr. Fleming, let whoever you want to there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. So my name is Trevor Addison, resource
Trevor,
management.
what?
Trevor Addison,
There we
resource
go,
manager,
okay.
Georgia Military College. Thank you all. So again, we have 5 standard, non-standard terms. We have a summer, which is a header term, a fall 1, a fall, a winter, and a spring term. Currently, a student can attend any of those terms, any 4 of those terms, and the state pays up to 12 hours, 12 credit hours. We then scholarship any hours thereafter. So what happens is you have students that want to attend the summer term. We invoice the summer as a summer invoice. They then come fall 1. We invoice the fall 1 based off Georgia Student Finance guidance as a fall invoice. They then subsequently come for winter. We invoice winter on a spring invoice. So then the spring comes and they're out of invoices. So the problem lies they could go to any other institution and attend year-round, not stopping. What we have to do is encourage students to sit out during the summer term, which you don't want to do to a student who's like we said earlier is geared up, ready to go. We ask them to sit out a summer term. So they can't come spring, or if they do come winter, our winter term ends in March of the year. They can't go back to the high school because the spring semester of their high school began in January. So they're forced to perhaps sit in a study hall or any other thing that the high school council would assign them up to do. They're out of funding per se, or out of invoices to go to a college, And they're also not able to go re-enlist back into the high school program because it's already started, which poses a problem with graduation if they planned it out that way, and completing their degree. So.
If I could say it simply, with this proposal that you have, there would be a budget impact. We recognize that in the documents that you've had.
Sure.
Does that help you? There will be a budget impact.
Everything he just said, I understand.
Okay, good deal.
Now, but that isn't my question.
Okay. Ask him again. Let
Okay,
me put you-
and maybe I'm not a good communicator, so bear with me. So, school A, that's not you, charges something for 1/4. And you got less than a quarter. Do you get the same money as school A? I know you call it a quarter, but it's not a quarter.
Well, if I may, our terms are approved through the Department of Education,
Mhm.
through SAC COC, and are audited just like any other school. And so it is a term, but all colleges' term weeks are different.
Right.
For instance, Georgia State University this year is offering a Maymester. It's only 15 days, but they had to go through the same rigor requirements.
It's priced different.
It is priced, well, perhaps it's priced different, but our credit hour rate stays the same across the board. So we're not charging more for summer and less for fall one.
Okay. I just wonder if you're getting 20% more money or 25% more money by us doing this.
If a student, so right now, a student sits out a term. So for us, we're not receiving that funding for that student.
Okay.
But they may be going to another school where the state's paying the funding there.
Yeah.
So the bottom line may not change, but for GMC, it will change because they will then be able to stay a full year at GMC and not be caught in this predicament where in winter they may stop and go to Georgia
Yeah.
College and then come back.
I understand that. Okay.
So yes, for us, we would then be able to bill a fifth invoice, they'd be able to stay, and we would receive funding for that.
Who do you bill that, ma'am, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, please.
Who
go
do you
ahead.
bill the fifth invoice? Who are we talking about gets billed?
All invoices go through the Georgia Student Finance Commission. They
Okay.
administer the program.
And we've got a man in
Sure.
the back, so maybe I could hear from him because he's really smart, and I'm not. Because I just wanted to understand if by doing this, they're going to get 25% more money.
Sir, Chris, would you like to address this, or could you? Bless your heart. Sorry to pick on you and put you on the spot.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you. Representative Fleming, General Caldwell did meet with us during the summer and very appreciative always for being willing to meet with us. We were unable to reach a solution on our own, which is why we're back here today. Regarding a fifth quarter, to your point, if we wanted to keep the cost neutral for the tuition piece, we could spread out the award amount over 5 quarters, but we still would be required by law to pay them a book and a fee award for this additional quarter. So the Finance Commission does have concerns about potential cost impact of this bill.
Because of that specific quarter.
Well, yes, sir, and if we keep the award rate amount at the same, I believe it's 187 per hour.
No, not for us.
Excuse me, what is GMC?
Average 120 per hour.
120. So we could each give you an estimate for duplicating another quarter just based on current invoicing patterns. I think the range from last year, I remember 700,000 to maybe as much as $1.5 million for another quarter. Of the private institutions that participate in dual enrollment, GMC has the second highest number in terms of dollars.
They also have a lot of people.
Yes, sir, and I'd have to defer to General Caldwell. Total in the program, we had about 36,000 students across the state participating in dual enrollment in its entirety. I'm not familiar with GMC's specific participation.
This last year was just at about 2,100.
I mean, I met with one of your colleagues this summer about this, and so I had understanding that this isn't lining up with. That's why I'm trying to get clarification because, you know, there's the whole thing that I'm not making a joke. There's not 5 quarters in a whole, you know. And so that's why I'm trying to make sure we paying 20% more by doing this.
Yeah, I understand exactly what your
Okay.
question is, sir. There will be some additional income, if that's the question you're asking, above today what would normally take place. Our estimate would be about 260 students, best case, in the summertime, taking classes, with the intent to just ensure they can continue taking classes year-round. But you are right. There is some additional expense that Georgia Student Finance would reimburse Georgia Military College for that summer period.
Okay.
Again, going back to the intent, we believe the intent of the bill was to enable students in Georgia to take college classes year-round, is what we think was the intent of the bill. We don't think there's any intent to say, but you can only do it 4 terms in a year. Our non-standard academic term has always been 5. I mean, we were at 5 when this legislation was first drafted. I just don't think anybody really thought about this public independent college that still is at 5.
I
So-
definitely understand that part.
Okay.
I do.
So,
I-
no, but you're right, that would generate the ability for a student, which we think would be about 260, to take up to additional 12 credit hours if they took that many in the summer with us, which would cost additional money for them to do that. That is correct.
Now, you mentioned just something in exchange. His reimbursement rate for an hour, how does that compare? Because if his hourly reimbursement rate's 20% lower, then this would all make sense.
Yes, sir.
Or
Thank you.
25% lower, maybe.
Thank you for the question. So public's standard undergraduate tuition per hour. For private institutions, it's up to $250 per semester or $187 per quarter, but not to exceed their standard hourly tuition amount.
And they determine that, or do you?
They determine it, and as far as appropriations go, we would just look at that every year. And of course, all these come from recommendations from the Dual Enrollment Task Force in 2014 that set these award amounts.
If I could, just to help you on that one, please correct me if I'm wrong. As a public independent school, if our tuition was $187 per credit hour, that's what we'd be reimbursed for. We can only, as all the other schools in Georgia, charge whatever your regular tuition rate is. Our average tuition rate right now across our campuses is right at $120, $121 per credit hour. So that's what we charge. You're not allowed to increase for dual enrollment and charge higher tuition than what you charge any other college student that's taking credit hours at your college or university. So it's all in their public websites. You can go in and look what every college and university charges per credit hour. And that's all they can charge for a dual enrollment credit hour too.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And SARS is about an average of 121 per credit hour.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Rhonda Burnell? Hold on, there you go.
Oh, okay. I just have 2 questions, Mr. Chairman. One is, you said only about 267 students would take advantage of the summer. Is that out of all of your campuses, just 267?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then my other question is, do you all automatically accept, like, say if they do go to another institution, you automatically will accept whatever class that they took at the other institution if they went somewhere else on that off time?
Yes, ma'am. Most any SAC COC accredited college or university is pretty much a direct exchange in the state of Georgia. And as you know, we're an open admissions college, so all you have to do is show up with a GED to go to college with us. Now, if you're a high school student, we've actually made standards for them, though. Our feeling is we don't want them to start college courses with us and fail. So we have actually made some requirements. You have to have an SAT, ACT, or standardized test that we will give you through either Compass or Accuplacer. And we have standards within that you have to meet. And if you don't meet those standards, we're not going to allow you to. Now, we don't do that for a regular college student, I know. We're tougher on the high school kids. But our feeling is if the high school student's going to do this, we have a responsibility to ensure they're going to be successful, because that college grade stays with them the rest of their life, even though they took it in high school. It's a permanent part of their transcripts for the rest of their life.
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanna
Okay.
make a motion when the time is
Okay.
correct.
Any other committee members have any questions for Mr. Fleming and his fine folks? Recognize you, Mr. Williams.
Make a motion, do pass.
Okay, got a motion, second. Very easy. All in favor? Is there any discussion? I mean, first. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? You move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Representative Clark, who is just presenting a bill in another committee, and it's raced over here. This is a bill that we heard a couple weeks ago, 702. He has a sub, it's in your folder, and if he would, since we know generally what it is, Mr. Clark, would you explain the changes and what you're up to? I will say, Representative Clark's worked with folks in my office, Legislative Council, very carefully try to fix some of the, smooth it out from what we saw last time.
Yes, sir.
Pull the, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 702, LC number 288765S. So there have been multiple changes from meeting with people in your office, members of the committee, Student Finance Commission, to kind of smooth some of the questions that were asked last time. So some of the changes in eligible student, we changed the definition here to make sure that we were, before it just said that they were a student with basically a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. But we changed it to add in line 32, well 31, that they are, the job that they have that they're employed with is actually in computer science or engineering. So before they could have got a degree in STEM but gone work in HR, and that's kind of defeating the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. So that was one change. Also putting in there that they're not currently, how did they word that here? Ineligible student is not currently employed as a civil service employee at a defense installation. So again, we're trying to get into the recruiting aspect and bringing the jobs there, not opening the door for people who are currently maybe employed and been there for 30 years and still have student loan debt to get their student loan debt repaid. We changed the definition, or not the definition, but some of the language. We changed the wording, there was a lot of wording in here about forgiveness, and we changed that to repayment, since it's not forgiving the student loan, it's just repaying it. And then there was a lot of questions regarding how the payments would have been paid back, starting in line 62. Previously, it was kind of scaled down. It was front-end loaded. Due to some of the requests of members of the committee, we made it consistent, just $5,000 over 5 years, per year over 5 years, to not exceed. Also, the contract they enter into, beginning in line 69, some of the clawback language, we clarified that it's 1 year after the last installment, line 72, last installment of such assistance, provided, however, that the authority, and we also previously, if they had to pay back because they broke the contract, it would have been due immediately in total. Immediately in total, they would have had to pay back whatever they owed. We changed this to give the Student Finance Authority the ability to kind of set some terms and conditions in contract, if they do break the contract, what the repayment would be, and kind of establish the reimbursement, the repayment of that debt back to the state. And again, that this does not, there is no financial fiscal note with this, because this doesn't appropriate any funds. It just creates the fund that we would have to appropriate in an appropriations bill. and that's pretty much some of the changes, covering most of the changes that have been made, that I can remember some of the questions that y'all had that I tried to address with this bill.
And just to verify, he has to go out now. If we decide to pass this, it goes through the process to work to creates a new line item. And he'll have to, and those in favor of this or want to work for it, will have to create funding in the next budget year or thereafter whenever they can round it up. Any of the committee have a question, Ms. Burnell?
This, I'm sorry, this isn't like other loan repayments where you have to make so many payments in advance. Like, as an educator, you would have to pay, make 20 payments, and then you could apply for the loan forgiveness. So this is paid immediately once you through graduating?
Well, not once you are hired by the defense installation in the state of Georgia, in the computer science or engineering field, then you could apply and you would be paid back a year after applying. So upon that first application, when they receive the application, you would receive your first reimbursement a year after your application, and then every subsequent year for 5 years after that.
Okay.
So they would have to maintain, but with whoever the lender is, they would have to maintain current status even during that year before they would receive payments from the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Garner?
So current status means in school? Is that what you mean?
On what line are you referring to?
I'm not referring to any line. Was hearing you say a minute ago that current status, they'd have to maintain current status.
Oh, well, it's just
Is that
like
with regard to the loan or regard to the school?
Well, they would have to pay until they get any money from the state, they would have to pay on their own.
For the first year?
Yes, ma'am.
In other loan repayment things that I've seen, particularly in the medical field, they calculated the number of years that the doctor would have to work in that community based on some kind of balance of the cost. And I don't know how you would balance this cost, but I really appreciate the changes you've made, and wondering what it says now, that they have to continue to work for the civil service for 1 year only?
No, ma'am. It would be 1 year after the last installment, and then they would have to pay back whatever. So say they left after in the middle of year 3, and they've received $15,000 at that point. They would owe $15,000 back to the state because they would have to stay for the duration of that 5 year that fifth installment.
How long are they required to pay for to stay working for the civil authority before they go work for a private contractor?
It would be 5 years. If they leave within that 5 year period, they would have to pay back whatever they've received.
But when they've finished their education, they have no requirement to stay there.
They would have to have already finished their education beforehand. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. They already have their degree. They're hired, and this is a loan repayment for the degree that they already have.
Oh, for the degree they already have.
Yes,
I missed
ma'am.
that critical factor. Thank you.
Got Blinken here. Ms. Chandler?
I just wanted to thank you for responding to our concerns, because as I read over the bill, it looked as if you'd responded to all of them.
Thank you. I tried to. I took a lot of notes and had some questions after the meeting myself, and went to Legislative Council and got some changes to make sure that my intention with this legislation and the intention of what y'all were wanting to address was being met.
And I'll also say, Ms. Chandler, he's not here right now. He's going to get his car fixed. Will in our office was very instrumental, I think, in helping Mr. Clark with this bill. I've got Mr. Williams. No, it's Rhonda Burnout. Excuse me. Left-handed.
Oh, okay. Just one more question. So, just so I can understand this, when they finish the 5 years, their loan is completely paid off.
If they have less than $25,000, I mean, if they had $50,000 in student loan, they're only halfway there.
Okay, all right, that's, I just wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
Okay.
Either committee have any other questions? Mr. Gasway?
This, this sort of assumes, and maybe I'm wrong, that this employment is gonna be 5 consecutive years. If there's a possibility of a furlough or a layoff, are we building that into this so that they wouldn't be penalized, they just kinda go on hold?
Yes, sir. In the
Maybe I don't see that.
in line number. Let me make sure I give you the right. I'm trying to find the exact line number in the bill.
Look at 76. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So, the authority may release the eligible student from such obligation if it is demonstrated to the satisfaction of the authority that such eligible student is unable to continue in employment as a federal civil service employee at a defense installation in this state as a result of death, disability, or loss of employment through no fault of such eligible student. So like if they were working on a mission, say at Fort Benning, and that mission got moved to, I don't know, California, I'm just throwing a state out, that they're no longer able to continue their service or their work at that installation because the mission moved. That's no fault of their own. Or a furlough and they made cuts, and if the federal government made cuts, that's no fault of their own. So the authority could make that determination that it's no fault of their own, and they're not breaching the contract.
I'm sorry, it's in here, I'm sure. Which authority? Just help me.
Student finance.
Okay, so the student finance, I'm 3 years in, I've given a guy $15,000. Thing gets moved to California, and the authority can control completely releasing him from everything.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You still had that studious look on your face.
It's one of those
I was
days, I
looking-
guess.
Okay.
It's been a tough day.
Amen. Ma'am, excuse me, I'm sorry.
What was that? At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Any other questions from the committee? We recognize to make a motion, Ms. Chandler.
Make a motion, do pass.
We had a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? So, thank you, Mr. Clark.
Well, thank you, members of the
On the
committee,
rules.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for working with everybody to smooth that out. Sure appreciate it.
And thank y'all, because I feel like it's a better bill now. There were some
Absolutely.
things in there that were not intended.
You made it. And one, Ms. Clark, before you take one farther step, we need your 1 and 2. Ah, there you go. Okay, last but not least, our own committee member, Mr. Williams. You can stay right there. You're good to go. Have I got you on? There we go. I'm sorry.
There we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee. This substitute for House Bill 928. The LC number is 215971S. What this bill does is extend Hope Scholarship. And the main goal of it is from 7 years to 15 years. What this allows is people who have had their life interrupted, whether it be through marriage, childbirth, other family issues, or even military service. It gives them time to complete their education. As I heard a futurist speak a few years ago, by the year 2020, we're going to be 1 million RNs short. We're going to be 1 million school teachers short. And what happens a lot of times is these people are attempting to finish their education, but life gets in the way. And then they can't afford to continue paying out of their pocket. And this just gives hope the opportunity and gives these people time to finish and get their degree and their training so they can become productive in society and fill some of these shortages that we have. I have two expert witnesses. If you would like to hear testimony from them, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm pretty much hit on. Oh, okay.
Excuse me, ask you questions first, and then we'll let you have your speaker speak.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Burnow.
I just want to thank you for this because I have had family members that this has happened to, and life does happen, and sometimes and they need to be able to know that they can go back and finish. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Pizol.
Scoot up a little bit.
Uh-oh. He hadn't said anything all day, and now he's going to pick on me, Mr. Chairman.
This is a great bill.
Thank you.
And I know that your expert witnesses have come here and they want to talk, but this is great. This is a no-brainer for me.
Absolutely.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No other questions? You have two folks you want to speak. If you can either sit right there or sit over here, just so you're at a microphone and everyone can hear you. Just identify yourself and.
WIT 2.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members, and thank you, Representative Williams. I appreciate your support. And I'm glad to hear that that there's positive reception towards this. Georgia has, and I feel like this is a sell that I may have over prepared for, but anyway, Georgia's Department of Economic Development has done a fabulous job of recruiting businesses to our state. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm Amy Lancaster. I'm Director of Workforce Development with the Metro Atlanta Chamber. So we, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, I mean, we're number one in the nation for business, and there's a reason. We recruit, but we got to fill those jobs. Since 2014, there have been significant increases in job postings requiring bachelor's degrees, and that's across the state. When you look at the Atlanta metro area, there's been a 26% increase. The state as a whole, 28%, and outside the Atlanta metro area, 33%. So this is not just a metro area issue. It involves the entire state. When we looked at Jobs EQ, that's some forecasting data that we have access to. It shows that the growth in those areas for bachelor's degrees and associate's degrees over the next 10 years is estimated at 1.3% for associate's degrees and 1.2% for bachelor's degrees. That's per year. So we still have a lot of work to do in conferring the degrees needed to fill demand. Georgia's got a little bit of catching up to do when it comes to per capita income. We are 11% below the national average at $26,678. But with all that growth we have and the demand for bachelor's degrees and associate's degrees, there's some great average incomes with those degrees. So $41,000 is your average earnings for an associate's degree, $81,000 for bachelor's, and $107,000 for postgraduate. That is not entry level. That is all jobs with those degree levels. Why we need the extension, you've already mentioned, life gets in the way. Creating access for more students to continue their education and finish, and whether if they start out and they need to stop after the associate's degree to start working to earn more income, but helping them get back on the path to get up to a bachelor's degree. We've got areas like healthcare that you mentioned. There's demand across the board at all levels of education that we're struggling to keep up with. If we can make it possible for students to continually pursue and continually upskill themselves, it helps our employers very much as well as the citizens. So we're very excited about this bill and appreciate your support. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the demand data if that's helpful.
Mr. Gasaway.
Well, I was already thinking before you said demand data. I don't have a question about that. Can you answer, and this may be back to the bill sponsors, I'm sorry, where the 15 came from? Is there any actuarial study
So there is some information that I pulled from USG's website around graduation rates. So at the 7-year mark, the average is 63% system-wide. But if you go up to 10 years for just looking at the 2007 cohort, so incoming freshmen for 2007, it goes up to 66.3%. And that's without any additional support with Hope, right? So we could increase. There's definitely already increase in graduation rates the longer time you have. And so if you have the additional assistance and availability of Hope funds for those students that still meet the merit requirements and the GPA requirements, those numbers should go up even more.
Let me jump in there, Representative Gasaway. We had requested the fiscal note, and then we created a sub, which kind of threw them the curve, so that we're behind on that. So we don't have one. But as soon as I get it, I'll get it to the committee members. Of course, it'll be in the floor package. But that's the answer you wanted, wasn't it?
One of them.
Oh, my. Well. Anything else? Yeah, I just want to compliment Amy. She's worked very hard on this subject and many others about workforce. I had to shoo her away a time or two, because got a lot going on like everybody else. But I sure appreciate her persistence and working with Representative Williams on this very good bill. I think it'll make an impact on a lot of people's lives. Anybody else? It's appropriate time, please. Got a second? Up here, Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? You want to tell her how great it is? She wants. There, she wants you to. Could all in favor say aye? Aye. And oppose? Ding. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Committee.
And that concludes our meeting. I appreciate it.